Build Show Live 2024 conference classes are brought to you by Builders First Source, Huber Engineered Woods, Pella, and Sashco. This session is sponsored by Polygaurd.
Hey guys, this is Stephanie Daly live from Build Show Live. If you have missed this year's event, you're in luck. We will be doing this again next year, October of 2025 in Dallas, Texas. I'm here at the Pella booth and I want to introduce you to one of my favorite new products, which is Pella's brand new wood window installation system, Steady Set. This product has been a game changer for us on the job site for multiple reasons, but I'll give you some of my top favorites. So first, it comes with these flip and click clips, which allow us to install the windows a lot quicker and safer because we're installing from the interior of the home. It also cuts down on the number of people needed because it has this amazing head stabilizer. It's got built-in shims. There are so many great features to this window. It's been a game changer for us on the job site. Another thing that's been one of my top favorites is actually the flashing flange. So we no longer have a traditional nailing flange. We're not putting a bunch of holes in our weather barrier. We just install the window. We can go through the entire home, install everything, and then we can just do the flashing from the exterior. So we can take care of not having a bunch of scaffolding and just having people be a lot more safe. We just take this great protective cover off, and then the flashing flange folds out. It has a really great rubber corner, which I've loved, and it makes things a whole lot simpler. Additionally, on the bottom of this, it's actually labeled in both English and Spanish, telling people not to tape the bottom in case any water did get in. That gives it a place to get out. Pella has really changed the game with wood window installation, and you guys are not going to want to miss this. You can go visit Pella's website at www.pella.com/SteadySet for more information.
Steve Baczek, how about we teach some building science?
I'm ready.
Actually, it's build science, because that's what we trademarked.
Build science.
All right, my friends, build science 201. 101, 201.
201, buddy, 201.
What's our time frame? Who's got to watch? Or who
I think we're on for about 12 hours.
12 hours. Okay, we'll be done at midnight, people. Is this a 45-minute presentation?
A 90-minute.
90-minute. Okay, good. We got plenty of time then.
I was thinking next year, like a little fireplace, couple comfortable chairs, and make it more like a fireside chat.
I like that. That'd be great, because we got to stand up here for 90 minutes
90
now.
minutes, man.
So 12:15 is our out time, I'm assuming.
I believe so.
Okay. All right, let's roll, Steve. What do you think?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Board feeling
all ready?
Warmed up?
Yeah, 201. Anybody watch it yet?
We got a couple. All right, this is a good preview.
Anybody want to lie and tell me they watched it? Thank you. All right, well, at least now I feel better. Did you love it? Good.
He hasn't watched it yet. He's lying.
Oh, you got jokes.
We got a liar in the front row, Steve.
Take your laughing butt outside the door.
If you don't know, Steve and I filmed 101 in the studio and then filmed 201 in the studio, and we've already filmed and are in the edit stage for 301. So this is the condensed version. The long version is más o menos 3-ish hours.
Yeah, maybe 3.5 hours or so.
Something like that. And it's broken down into like 12 parts. If you watch it on our website, thebuildshow.com, after each part, which is a roughly 20-minute episode, there's a quiz that you can take. And if you finish all the episodes and finish your quizzes, we'll give you a certificate that says I completed Build Science 101, Build Science 201. It's the kind of thing that you could put in your office, and I would be willing to bet that you'll have a client who comes in and goes, "Oh, you watched the Build Show?" And then all of a sudden you'll have a conversation about details, and you'll find you've got a client who actually knows something about building science and is interested in talking to you about more than just this competitor down the street is less expensive.
Did you know that if you take the completed certificate and you post it on Instagram and tag Jake Bruton, he'll send you a very expensive bottle of whiskey?
Really? I didn't know that.
No,
wow.
That's part of the deal.
Didn't know. I hope Jake's here listening.
So, yeah, just personally message Jake on IG and ask him, I think you get to select the bottle of whiskey and the size. So just, put it on there and say, "Where's my whiskey? Here's the certificate. I posted it. Steve said."
Free overnight shipping.
Yeah, free overnight shipping. So, all right. So 201. If you remember in 101, we laid the format down where we talked a little bit about control layers, the 3 words per layer, right, for water management. It was, what was it? Oh, see, now you don't all have jokes anymore, huh? See, I got jokes now. Protection, mitigation, and prevention, right? So 201 was basically, let's put up a bunch of photos and ask the simple question, do you know it when you see it, right? So we're gonna look at photos that are directly targeted at those 12 words that we use to describe the control layers in 101. Right? Protection, oh, I had the eraser on.
Make sure Big Red's
Protection, mitigation, and prevention, right? Pretty simple. If you don't want something to leak, what's the best way? Don't let it see water, because it's the first thing we need for a leak, right? Mitigation. If we can't get rid of the water, give it a path. And of course, at some point, we have to say, this is where we stop it. No water past here.
The Alamo, as Steve likes to say.
The Alamo, even though we didn't fare too well, right? So, protection, aspect ratio, right? So, I have a distance here, and then I have a distance here, right?
Can y'all see in the back, by the way? How's the visual? Is only the first 5 rows seeing his red marks? You're good. I see thumbs up. Keep going, Steve.
I can beef up Big Red here, somewhere, I think.
A fatter line.
Yeah, I can go to a fatter line here, so.
They get a thumbs up, so I think we're okay.
There. So, but basically the aspect ratio is the distance on the head and distance of the soffit. I like to keep that at least 1 to 1. Anything better than 1 to 1, meaning the soffit's bigger than that head distance, the better I feel, right? So in this case here, this is probably a 2 to 1, right? I think that's something like 12 inches, and we're probably somewhere around 7 inches or so there. But look what happens when the wall got longer on this project. So did in our soffit. And, you know, the idea is, as an architect, is to make it look pretty and perform very, very well, right? So there's some nice things going on in this arrangement that you don't really see, like the fact that these brackets, they actually taper and lose about 1 inch in thickness.
Oh, interesting.
Because it helps it make it look nice and thin as that bracket goes out to the roof there.
What size overhang was that, Steve?
This is about 66 inches.
Wow, that's a big
on
one.
that. But this is also about, I think this is probably something like 11'4", I think, something like that. So it's a formidable opponent for rain. So
my analogy on that one that I like to think about is, you know, the baseball cap versus the umbrella versus the golf umbrella, right? The bigger the umbrella, the more protection we're going to have on our buildings. And Steve's 1-to-1 ratio is a good mental reminder for me to think, okay, how much room do I have between the top of the window and an overhang, a protection, my umbrella, right? If I've got a lot of room, I'm gonna need a golf umbrella. If I don't have a lot of room, that window's up near that overhang, like you see on that photo on the left, I don't have to worry about putting a golf umbrella up because I've got good protection on there.
yeah. Does anybody have any idea? Shout it out, certainly. Where do windows typically leak? Head of the window,
Yep.
right? Nathan Yost and I spent over a year working with flashing companies and such at the Building Science Corporation, touring around the country, installing windows, taping them up, flashing them, and then hosing them down under pressure and seeing how the flashings failed. It was actually a really good test because we had people from Tyvek and people from a couple other flashing companies. We were all together talking about it. So it's kind of a joint effort, if you will. So that's why I'm always concerned with that aspect ratio. And of course, you know, if we put in a lot of sliders, then maybe we want to think about just doing a nice big 6-foot porch roof to the 11-foot plate height, right? And use, again, the aesthetics of architecture to get us some really good performance there. Mm-hmm. And like I was just talking about, using architecture to solve for it. You know, the thing I really love about this photo, this is the first passive house I ever did. This is 2009. But look at that. Not one door or window is unprotected. right? Again, you know, Joe Stiebrick would always say, oh, well, all windows leak. And I'd always kind of in the background say, well, not if I don't let them see water, right?
You're going to see that at my house. Anybody going on the tour this afternoon? Anybody go on the tour already on Thursday? Okay, so for those of you who went on the tour already, you saw in the back of my house, all my first floor windows, especially my wood unclad windows, I recessed those back into the opening, and then I made sure, like on my living room windows, if you were standing at the fireplace and looking back at the house, all those windows on the left, they had that 2-foot overhang, that 1-to-1 ratio, but my big slider was at the bottom of a 2-story wall, totally sitting there unprotected had I not done that awning. The same was true for my kitchen window, and then when you went around the corner, I don't know if you saw those 2 awnings I put in for my first floor windows. You know, as we think about first floors that have a 2-story wall, that's exactly what it was on the last slide. Sorry, will you back up one quick slide,
Yes.
Steve? That's exactly what Steve's showing on that door out there on that right-hand side of the house. That door has an overhang, but it's way up there. That doesn't work in his 1-to-1 ratio or 2-to-1 ratio, does it? So now putting that little head, what would you call that? That's not an awning, but
A little canopy.
a canopy for
canopy.
that door. Now that door has some forgiveness. It's got an umbrella up over it.
Yeah. And likewise, you know, here's another picture. This is down near the water on the Cape. You went out there. I don't want to mention it, but this is your best video on YouTube.
Is it really my best video?
It's got like 1.2 or 1. Million.
Was that the super insulated house?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
with Jim and Shoreline.
That was when I first met you.
Yeah, we
that was
toured
cool.
the
That was
house.
a cool house.
Did well. But again, here, you can see, we bumped out that dining room intentionally so we can provide some protection for that sliding glass door on the first floor, right? It's not rocket science. And then sometimes, like with that passive house that we talked about, you get the double aspect ratio. Because this had a 12-inch thick wall, I could recess the windows in that 8-inch cavity and then still have a 24-inch overhang here. So by the time you get back to the window and the glass, you know, we're at 32 inches. So I think I'm going to talk about that. But you bring up a really good point. The question was, do we risk any pooling at the sill? You know, one of the things I like to talk about is, remember, no good deed goes unpunished, right? I protect the head. I can push the window way in, and you're going to see it, because the one I show you, I push the window in about 18 inches. But then that reveals the sill for 18 inches. So you have to come up with a solution that can combat the extended sill.
A couple of you that were at my house the other day, we were talking about that because I have some recessed windows.
Next slide.
There you go.
Right.
I have some recessed windows in the back of my house that are the European style. So I recessed the window in kind of a fat wall cavity. And I've got a hardy sill that's got a little bit of pitch, like a 5-degree pitch to it, but they get real dirty. And I suspect that's my especially dirty Texas air. If you went to my house, I'm like, 250 yards or 300 yards from a major highway. So I've got brake dust, I've got all this other junk in the air, plus the pollen issue we get in Texas. So my sills get pretty dirty and I hose them off on a regular basis. But to your point, my sills really don't get very dirty because the pollen and junk stays on the sill forever unless I hose it off. So it's something to think about. Do I want to worry about that maintenance of having a dirty sill, or do I want to push that window out?
Yeah. So while this aspect ratio is probably something like 9 to 2 or 9 to 1, I'm sorry, right? You get that extended sill, like you were mentioning, in the challenge. So we moved to a preformed copper pan. It actually tilts up at the edge and it actually folds in to the sill opening there. We had them made up. In New England, we have some pretty cool craftsmen that will make up flashing systems for us like that.
As a side note, Steve, I stopped by the Ocnoplast. Am I pronouncing that right? Steve and I were at the Ocnoplast booth before the show opened today. And when we traveled through Europe, a lot of the European manufacturers for windows have jamb extensions and sill extensions that you can buy with the windows. And I've not really seen that in America much, whether it was a European window or not. And the Ocnoplast guy showed me some pictures that I was super excited to see on his phone, where they make jamb extensions for their windows, so you can buy them from the factory to extend the jambs out. And they make either, was it aluminum or stainless? I think aluminum sills that are sloped that basically pop right into the bottom of the
Yeah, they're kind of like, they're shaped like this.
I forgot.
And then these receive a screw into the window.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, you could probably get these on the order of up to 18 inches from like 2 inches.
And they'll custom order those with the window. So go see the Ocnoplast guys.
And they're color matched and powder coated, all the same.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and actually most European windows are set to receive that too. They'll have like a little lip on the window. So that tucks in nice and neat. We've used them before. The challenge is they come with an end dam. And so on the end, you end up with a piece that looks like this. This is the piece folded down, and you have that little end dam. And then you're trying to bring your corner board or your jamb, and it's a little goofy. It's a little bit of a challenge, but they are great systems, no doubt. So, protection of the parts, right? So maybe it's not only about the roof protecting the house. Airex, you know, they do a really good job of protecting those penetrations. You know, this is fully gasketed, screw down there, nice sealed connection. Even though we have a rain screen behind there,
That's a cool product. Airex Manufacturing, and that's the Titan outlet, they call it.
But I guess it's, you know, my point there is that when you're talking about building science, you know, there's a scale on all of the concepts. So when you're talking about protection, it could be this small penetration, it could be the head of a window, it could be a full-length glass wall, right? So it all depends on what you're talking about, but the concept remains the same. So mitigation, right? Giving it a path. This is a closed joint clapboard. It's a cedar lap siding. It's on a rain screen system, but it really doesn't give anything the ability to weep out here, right? Most of it is going to go down there and it's going to come out here at the bottom. And air is going to go in here and go up through there. The open joint rain screen, which is one of my favorite conditions, is basically air open, right? It's just, when you talk about the wetting potential and versus drying potential, this probably has the highest drying potential of any building I've ever done, right? Things can get wet. And I always make the comment of, think back before we had kilns. How did we dry wood?
Can I actually draw for 2 seconds?
Go ahead, you got the hat now.
I've never drawn on the vibe board before. See if I can do it. Here's the other thing I like about it, Steve. Look at the remodelability, serviceability. Steve, I've been to this house, Steve. This house is gorgeous. And your carpenters, was this Shoreline?
This is Shoreline, yeah.
Shoreline did a perfect, they must have done a string line or something. All these screws are perfectly lined up. But if I want to service something, you know, adds, you know, electrical outlet there, whatever, you can see what a bad drawer I am. They got to unscrew those 6 screws, and that whole board comes off and can be put back on, could be refinished, could be replaced, could be changed or modified. There's a lot of remodelability that I really like there. Now, I'm not a fan of open joint because I don't love modern architecture if it was my personal house I'm building. But when it comes to serviceability, I really like that. On the other hand, you could also do that in a shiplap profile. Like when we were at Delta Millworks the other day, I was talking about a shiplap profile that I did from Delta, where we were able to basically make a fully removable cladding system out of a shiplap version of that, where we face screwed it. It was a little less modern, and it was fully removable, and I really like that.
You know, one of the things that, when you mentioning that, this is Alaskan yellow cedar, probably not the least expensive siding option out there, but we have done houses with open joint where we've used like a spruce siding. And you know, the minute you say that, people are like, oh my God, that's gonna warp and cup and it's gonna twist. It hasn't. And by having that open joint, we were weary of it warping and cupping and twisting. And so he said, okay, we'll just install it with an open joint so we could pull off any individual board that goes wonky. None of them have. But the idea is, you know, when people talk about affordability in systems, you know, using building science in your favor and the ability to dry means I can use a lesser grade wood system to use as siding because I'm putting it in a position to succeed. right? And what I was going to say earlier was, think about before kilns. How did we dry wood? We put it on sticks and let it dry. What are we doing here? It's 1-bys on sticks, right? We're just drying the wood. Go ahead. What do you mean exposed windows?
Meaning they don't have protection above them.
Oh, these. Yeah. I mean, I am damn good at my job, but I'm not God. So I'm going to have houses that have a first floor and a second floor and a roof. And we could, and we probably do talk sometimes about it. The aesthetic didn't really fit that house, but.
And I think, too, the thing to think about, that's a great question. Would you do a window without an overhang above it?
Or what is the best way to, obviously protect it without having...
Yeah, so I'll give you a quick example, not because of that house, but we're doing a very traditional, like colonial farmhouse right now. And over all of the windows, we have a little block of wood that's like this, and then we have a little sloping 1-by. And that's on the top of every window. So the window head is literally right there. And it's just enough, that'll get flashed back to the wall, but it kicks the water off of the window head and fully protects that window head and has that old New England colonial aesthetic attached to it.
And go back to watch 101 too, because something we talked about yesterday when we were given our 101 presentation is you always have to think about where you're building. Where are you from, by the way? Austin, Texas. So Austin, Texas, we get 36 to 40 inches of rain annually. But if you remember, I don't know if you guys got it in New Braunfels, it was last weekend we got like 2 inches of rain. Did you guys get that too? We got 2 inches of rain in an hour or something. It was flooding conditions. It was crazy and windy. So, if you're building a house in those kinds of conditions, you got to take pretty good precautions. On the other hand, the guys that are from Arizona that are here, they get maybe 15 inches of rain a year or 10 inches of rain. They have less protection needs. So we got to think about what's our level of protection, and also what's your risk level too, frankly. If you're building a real modern house with no overhangs anywhere, well, you got to go to the absolute best products, best head flashings, get the architect to agree to project the head flashings like he's talking about here. If you're building a house in a subdivision that is a normal house, let's say we've got a 2-foot overhang, but it's above us, that house may not get as wet on normal rain events. Believe it or not, sometimes houses, when they have gusher rains, there's heavy rain that comes down and the overhang's protected. It's the lighter rains with wind that get the walls wetter than anything. So it's really figuring out what's your level of risk. And then the thing I talked about in the presentation yesterday is it's not just architectural risk, it's client risk. If I'm building a multi-million-dollar house for a CEO, if I make the slightest mistake, man, I'm going to have an attorney on my butt and I'm going to be in major trouble. So I'm not going to take a less cost product, a less good method, a less good window. And lastly, the last thing I want to mention, and we haven't gotten into this at all, but this is probably 401. You need to think about the ratings of the products you're using. There's as a side note, door companies that are out of desert areas, I'm always a little suspect of them, right? If you put a door into a house in LA or Nevada, maybe some air leaks in, people are like, oh yeah, I gotta redo my whatever. If you build a house in Santa Barbara, their windows are open 80% of the year, so they don't really care about an air-sealed window. If you build a house in Wisconsin and you're a northern window builder or maybe a European window builder where it's 10 degrees outside, that cold blows in and some snow blows in, you got a really PO'd client. So us as builders need to go, okay, what's the threat level on this house? What's the exposure? And then also, I know you're telling me you want to use this modern door or whatever, but I want to ask that manufacturer, hey, what's the performance grade rating of that door? Like the Pella windows you're going to see at the Risinger build, they're PG-45 rated. When I did my blower door test prior to mechanicals, I blew a .45 and I didn't tape any windows or doors. I have a slider. I have several Pella swing doors. They're really, really tight. They're a really tight company. I like that about them. But I could have also specified a PG-65, and I think they might even make higher. I mean, much higher than that, we're talking about submarine doors. So that's something we need to think about too, is, we buy a less cost window, you're gonna get something that's lesser cost. We buy a more expensive window, you don't always get a better window. We need to we need to find out, hey, what is it about this window? Is this going to be a higher rated window? Probably a longer answer than you wanted, but.
Well, no, it's I mean, it's based obviously on the environment and also, you have good product, but if it's exposed to it, it might really happen there.
I mean, who they calling?
You got jokes now.
When your house leaks,
Bring this guy?
Do they call the
Not even paying
architect?
attention.
I don't know if are you a builder? When you have a problem in a house, do they call the architect first or do they call you? They call you. That's why you're in the room and they're not, right? Because you want to make sure that you don't get the phone call. That's why this is so important to us as builders. Because when you make a mistake, the architect says, oh, well, they didn't build it right. They used a cheap sub. They used a crappy material. It's totally their fault. If you've ever been sued as a builder, the architect rarely is sued. It's the builder who gets sued. We're the ones who take 99%
Should actually write a book,
liability.
phrases to evade architectural conviction.
I'm not trying to dig on you as an architect.
No, I know.
But if you notice, the room is probably 80% builders.
No, I get it.
5% architects.
Listen, I'm the first one to stay.
Larry Clay's got a question.
Profession.
Oh, no, you're not Larry Clay. Sorry, who are you?
Go ahead, bud.
You look like him.
Fernando. That's Fernando Ruiz. You know
Sorry,
him?
Fernando.
Anybody know
What's
him?
the question, brother?
If you've read Fine Building, I guarantee you've read one of Fernando's articles.
Oh, is that right?
He's in
That's
there all the
awesome,
time.
Fernando. I need to
Does
meet
an
you.
awesome job. Thank you.
I was just at Battlement, the European IBS.
Gotcha.
I was so impressed with the quality of the windows and doors. Do you generally regard them as better than U.S. windows? I started to look at distributors.
Yeah, let me answer that in a second. Anybody from Pella Anderson here in the room?
We're recording this, Steve, so they will watch it later.
So, no, but you know what? I brutally honest with you, at IBS last year, I met with the CEO of Anderson Windows. About a few months after that, I met with the CEO at Geldwen Windows, and I told them all, the world is getting smaller, and you guys better prepare yourself. Because I can go through EAS, I can order windows, and in 12 weeks, they're here. And they make windows in Wisconsin, and it takes them 12 weeks to go 1,000 miles, right? And I can get triple glazed windows with a performance of somewhere around R7 plus against an R3. Now, they say they can do triple glazed, and they can. We're actually doing a project with Anderson triple glazed. But, Cardinal Glass, we're in the R5 range, right? Saint-Gobain, I don't know what the hell their secret is. I'm going out in February to find out, but they never really reveal it every time I go out there and talk to their engineers. But do they build an exceptional product? Yes. Would I say it's better than America's? I don't know if I would say it's better. I would say it's different, right? That's like arguing about, a Lamborghini against, a really good American-made car. I don't know.
And there's a difference in windows, and there's different project price points too, right? Anderson is the Toyota of the world, where they make a Camry and they also make a Lexus.
Yeah.
So an Anderson 400 is a much different window than an Anderson 100. And I've put 100s in, and they're fine windows. But if I had the choice, I'd much rather have an Anderson 400. I think that's a bomber product. I really like it.
And there's a
That's
bulkiness
just one
that
example.
comes with it, right? There's a bulkiness. There's certainly a weight that comes with it. If you're ever a builder, I'll spec out 16-foot wide, 6-foot tall windows just because I want to watch the 8 guys install a 1,000-pound window.
Wait a minute,
And,
Steve.
they're like, hey, can you
Let's
give us
say
a
it out
hand? And I'm
loud.
like, sorry, my insurance doesn't allow me to do construction work. So unfortunately, I just have to watch here.
Can't help. Even though he's the strongest dude there.
They put it up, but the reality, we're doing this very traditional house. So we're going to an Anderson A-Series
Those are killer.
triple glazed window because we can get that 5/8 inch putty mutton. And the smallest I can get is an inch out of the European stuff. But I'm telling you, we were at Octoplast this morning. They're coming out with flanged windows. They have this pyramid mullion.
Yeah.
They're listening.
They're listening to the American market.
We're not such good listeners in America because they've been treated well for a very, very long time. But I think those times are going to start getting challenging for them.
Yeah, and I think we're also all in this room.
Don't go writing an article saying Steve said either.
We're on the wave of this where we care about performance, we care about longevity, we care about durability, And price isn't necessarily the very first thing we ask about, at least hopefully not. And so, I think it's people like you and I that are changing the way manufacturers are thinking about their products.
Yeah. So,
Let's keep going.
onward. Mitigation, give it a path. We actually have, this is an open joint rain screen. It is Boral boards that are on a, the
Coroplast?
no, it's the Batten UV by Benjamin Obdike.
Oh, yeah.
That it sits on, and then they're UV paper in back so you can look at it. This stone, I think I might have a picture of it later, but there's actually, we used horse board. I think it's called horse board, horse foam, but it's what you would use in a stable to get horses to maneuver around on a concrete slab, because you don't want their shoes, they'll slip and break their leg and such. So there's this thing called horse board. It's like a 1/2-inch foam. We'll cut it into narrow strips and use it as flashing.
It's like a rain screen on that
Yeah,
pan.
as a rain screen on a pan. And that's what that one piece of stone is sitting on. There's a full copper pan under there, so any water that comes in.
Wow.
This is a really great photo. While it talks about mitigation, this is also all about protection, right? It's a 7-foot recessed door opening. And then this whole bottom piece is in a copper pan back there, right? So it has all three, prevention, mitigation, and protection in that one photo. It's sitting on a wood frame depressed floor. So we built the floor like you would build a recessed shower, and then just, built that. So when you go down in his shop, there's that one section that comes down about 6 inches.
Why do you use a copper pan instead of stainless?
We have a lot of I want to say some of them are even plumbers that will fabricate it, or tin knockers that'll fabricate. Like a lot of our builders in the Northeast, which is where this is, there's like 2 or 3 guys that'll just build. Like we'll still do copper shower pans, right? Just because these guys are really, really good.
It's real malleable.
Yeah.
It's easy to solder.
Yeah, any size you want. Like, the shower's 3 foot by 4 foot or whatever, but it's really 36 3/8 by 48 1/4. So they'll come in, they'll measure it, and that copper pan is made in like a day.
And it'll last forever.
And it'll last forever, right? Oh, so there you can see. You can see the horse pad, the copper pan. The copper pan actually turns down. This is MTI dry. It's basically a panel that looks like that. It's corrugated, and then it has a fabric on one side. So that water basically turns into that MTI dry. The MTI dry goes all the way down the face of the foundation wall to a perimeter drain. The perimeter drain goes around the corner and goes to daylight.
I think Keen is here, and they make a similar product to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. I mean, Dorkin makes one too, right? It's just
yeah.
theirs is dimpled.
Yep.
And then they have the fabric. So
Yeah, there's lots of options out there, which is nice these days for that.
as impressed as I am with that, I was really impressed with the stone guy, because that piece of stone that went in there was one piece, and it's like maybe 1/8 of an inch off of the wall.
Wow.
He was exceptional. No. I was prepared for that question. I was wondering why it took so long. And I'm not trying to be snappy.
I mean, mud daubers will attach to
trying to be
anything.
funny,
They're
but-
going to come to your house no matter what.
I probably have,
I've seen a lot of homes that have their vinyl siding, and as soon as you pull it off, it's like they colonize the entire inside of it.
yeah, so understand what's different, because you bring up a good point. Think about it for a second. No, I'm totally serious here. Vinyl siding, what's different than an open joint rain screen? Right? When you want to get out of the wind, what kind of protection do you desire? Full protection or limited screening? Right? Right? You wouldn't want to stand behind a series of columns to get out of the wind. You want to stand behind a wall, right? When you get behind that wall, what happens? So it's a little warmer, could be even a little more moist, but it's a nice, comfortable environment. The open joint rain screen is not a comfortable environment. I've done probably at least 24 open joint systems on houses. I've recorded one conversation where the homeowner saw one bee. So I'm gonna go check with Carl, who owns that house, just to see, because Carl's probably one of the most observant people I've ever met.
Steve tends to attract engineers as clients.
It
if you
is
can imagine, what a shocker.
Amazing, amazing. Go ahead, Travis. Yes. Yes. But then I get people like you that sit there and say, you really want me to drag screen all around the house on the furring strips before I put this up? You see where I'm going with that? So now you understand my problems. You fell into that one, buddy. I can't help you there. Mitigation. It's not only above grade, right? This is a project in New England. These are all our downspout connections. They're all connected to a nice matrix, and then this goes out to the hillside and drains. Get rid of the water, make it someone else's problem. That's simple. It's really not complicated.
Could you bridge drain that matrix down below if you wanted to?
Yes, we're doing a house right now. That is going to a French drain. We actually have precast companies that will make like a perforated septic tank, if you will. And you can get like 2,000 gallons, and we'll bury it, and we'll put them in stone, and we'll just run water in there, and it'll slowly perk out. But the thing you have to be careful, this is actually a quite funny story. Someone called me and said, hey, I got a friend that's got a water problem. They're getting water in their basement, and they've done a bunch of mitigation, but can you go and check it out? So I go there. I pull into the driveway. I look. It's about a 300-foot hill of rock, right? And it happened to be raining that day. So like I could just see the water coming down the rock, and their house is literally at the base. And the guy's like, I don't know why. We put in a mitigation system. And I'm like, where did you put the mitigation system in? And he's like, oh, it's right over here on the other side of the driveway. And they have like a 2,000-gallon tank. But I'm looking over, and I can see the cap like bubbling and water just pouring out. And I was like, mitigation system. You have all this water coming down the hill and challenging your basement, and you think a mitigation system 40 feet away? Like, the conditions there are exactly the same at the house. You didn't really do anything by putting that in. So it does. It becomes a challenge, certainly.
And that's true, I think, even like for me in Texas, Steve, where we think about, I mentioned that 2-inch rainstorm. I mean, you put some small gutters on a house, well, 2-inch rainstorm is going to blow right through those in a heartbeat, right? You're going to have water going everywhere. So I think it's easy for us as builders to underestimate the power of water, especially when we have a pretty good gully washer.
Yeah. The do's and don'ts of a kick-out flashing, right? Water comes, gets kicked out. You'll have your gutter here. Water falls into the gutter and goes away. Doesn't really challenge the wall here, like this.
Yep.
You can see how the water's collecting on top of the meter box there. You can see
That's a leak waiting to happen right there.
And I can't tell you how many times I've driven by houses in New England. You see this, then you see the builder's truck. They strip off all the shingles, and you can see boards rotted, Tyvek, whatever, building paper. It's just totally tattered. They tear it all off, and guess what they do? They put up new plywood, they put up new building paper, and then they put up shingles. And they don't address the issue.
Wow.
Yeah, I've seen that a number of times.
There's actually a company here that makes nothing, well, not nothing, but one of their products is a kick-out flashing, the Jade-Out kick-out flashing by American Flashings.
Yeah.
They're I think they're a father-son company that was tired of seeing people make them wrong, and so they made right, left, and they made them all in colors. They're down on the show floor. They're a neat company.
Yeah, no, those are readily available. This was an interesting project. The wife got pretty much every decision on this 8,000 square foot house. The husband just had one. I want my own little deck where I can go out, look at the ocean, and stretch in the morning and just kind of welcome the day. So we did this little stretching deck for him. But while I was doing it, notice we have our treated joists in there, and this is all fabricated channel. We built the whole deck in the shop and then just lifted it up and bolted it on. But one of the things that I was concerned with is if we put the joists inside of these angles and they get water in there, they're going to rot. And one thing I never want to happen is this homeowner, who's the CEO of a major company, walking out and falling through the deck, right? So I said, how do we dry and what kind of details do we have to put in there to mitigate? So what I did, I'm going to
Yeah, zoom in on that. That's good, Steve. Thank
bring
you.
that up a
Just looking
little.
at that.
But notice there's a little neoprene pad that the joist sits on. It doesn't sit fully in that metal. Notice we did a cut on the back side here. So any water in there will drain out of the system, and no water is being held in that system. So it can fully dry, but we reduce the wetting potential of that system significantly.
That's really cool.
Right. And it's only a little micro detail, but again, when you're talking about water management, the scale of it just depends on what you're thinking about.
We got a question over here, Steve.
I don't know why. Well, the decking would become a challenge of how we attach it up on top, and yeah.
Make it a lot heavier too, that's for sure, if it was
And
getting
it would make
bolted
it
on.
heavier. You know, again, mitigation. Some systems are proprietary. I don't know if anybody's ever used it. This is resist siding. It's corn or rice hull that gets reconstituted into a siding profile and it gets put up. And they have their own proprietary system that you have to use to maintain their warranty. So they have these little aluminum truss furring strips that come as part of their system. I will warn you, this is not anywhere near an affordable system. But works really, really well. And, you know, you put that siding up, it's probably worth 100 years at least, where you'll never even have to touch it. Polygaurd. Go check them out. We won't talk too long, right? They're blue seal down at the bottom.
Blueberry.
They're waterproofing. Their primer that you put on the wall, or no, I'm sorry, this is their waterproofing, and then this is their,
Arroyo drain.
yeah, their drain. It's total flow and something.
Total flow and Arroyo drain.
Okay.
We got a bunch of below grade
Yeah.
drainage products.
And I just did a video on it, so go check it out, where I went through the whole system. My buddy Josh back there worked with me on the video and did the system and absolutely loved installing
We
the
got some
system.
great products.
Yeah. And prevention. You know, if you've been following Matt and I in our discussions, we talked about this, right? The house is done here. We can go to the house in this stage with a fire hose, and I would hope that we're successful, right? And of course, there's companies out there like Fast Flash
Quick flash.
or Quick Flash, and you know, there's other companies. Sega makes some stuff that goes over pipes that has different
Maxell was here
sizes.
that made one too. That's a Japanese company.
Yeah.
They were here at the show that has a gasket product.
So there's a lot of companies that use it. You know where else we use these? I don't know if I have it in this deck, but we'll use those flashing penetrations when we do our Myrex detail on the ceiling for an air barrier. The plumbers will use that for their plumbing penetration. They'll slide it down over the pipe in the attic, and they'll just adhere the Myrex to it, and it gives a nice air seal. So.
That's cool. Yeah, you got a gasket question? Go ahead.
Why would you spec a gasket versus adding a liquid flash type? Thank you. My question is, why would you spec a gasket versus using a liquid flashing solution for your penetrations like that?
There's a couple reasons. One reason that I like gaskets is if I think it might need serviced someday. I don't know if you saw any of the videos about the Risinger build under construction, but all of my aqua hose bibs, I put one of those on them. And I installed all of my blocks around my hose bibs with face screws, so I could pull the block off. I could actually go inside the house, and if you're going on the tour today, check it out. I put a service, what's the word I'm looking for? A service box, an access panel box on the inside of the house where all my hose bibs are. So I could take that access panel off, shut the water off, unscrew that hose bib inside the house, come outside, pull that through that gasket, and push a new one in. So in 30 years, when I need a new hose bib, I don't have to redo anything. I got the gasket in place. That rubber will still be in good shape because it's in the dark. So that'd be one reason to do it. I mean, another reason is just depending on the trade. Some trades in Austin, like they stock those at McCoy's, and their builder says, hey, wherever you put a penetration, you need to have a boot on it already. Because if you're attaching something like a hose bib, let's say, and you're not coming back till later, it can be hard to have those. So there's multiple reasons. We're just giving you options.
Yeah. And in reality, I don't really care. I care about how well it's installed. So if you wanted to do liquid flash there, as long as you do a good job, I'm good with that.
Yep, go for it.
But we get a lot of builders that say, hey, we're just going to buy a box of these gasketed flashings. Can we use those? Sure.
Good question, though.
Prevention, right? Back dam, you can see it there. Motivation, I call it. You know, if you just sat in when Matt and I were talking down on the main stage, he had builder's first source, taper the top of all of the cripples, so we get a slope sill to provide motivation to get that water.
You know why we like that, Steve? Because we don't have any cedar shingles on our job sites ever to get a slope sill like the guys in New England do. They'll put a beveled piece of clapboard siding down and slope a sill, but we don't ever have any of that around here. So we just make the cripples with a 5-degree bevel, and now we've got a slope sill.
Yeah. Down and out. Notice how everything is properly lapped. Notice how the stretch tape goes over our building paper there, and will go down what will be a Benjamin Obdyke rain screen on this project.
Cool.
Also notice how the stretch tape is turned up here, and this comes over the top of it. Right, and then there's a fully installed window. You can see everything's properly flashed. Notice there's no flashing down at the bottom, but also notice that you have that building paper there. The reason for that building paper is we have zip sheathing. This is the house where we were doing the Alaskan yellow cedar open joint. So we were going to do the whole wall in black paper, and we just didn't want to put it up too early where it tears or fades or gets challenged by UV. So they just put in this little flap. They flashed to it, they tacked it down, and then they'll just pull it off and slide the building paper up underneath it and properly flash it. So sequencing. And again, sequencing. Notice here, we have our flashing happening there at the zip, and then the insulation comes over the top. So they left that open so they can get in there and properly flash things. Right? Roll the tape. It's amazing to me. A woman came up to me, I don't know if she's in this room, but it doesn't matter. She came up to me yesterday after presentation, and she showed me a house that had tape on it. It wasn't zip tape, it was a different product, but it was tape. And she said, what do you think? And I said, that's one of the worst tape jobs I've ever seen. She said, so what should I do? I said, I don't do whatever you want, but that's one of the worst tape jobs I've ever seen. She's like, are you saying you wouldn't keep it? I'm like, hell no, it's the worst I've ever seen. Like, I would never accept that.
I love how you didn't mince any words, Steve.
Yeah, but it was absolutely horrible. You know, I get really cool clients, but, you know, Matt and I get to travel and meet really cool people. And I had the opportunity years ago, I was on a fishing boat, it was a little fishing derby, we were on like this getaway with a manufacturer, and I got locked on the boat with the guy that invented zip tape, right? He was the engineer that developed zip tape. He had like 3 PhDs. So for 6 hours on a boat, I got a lecture on pressure sensitive adhesive. Like, this guy spent the last 30 years of his life talking about adhesives and rolling and pressure. And I just asked a couple questions, and then I was like, oh my God, do I regret asking that question? But
6 hours later,
yeah.
Steve stepped
But
on the
honestly,
boat.
it was such a great education. But he ended it. Well, like, he goes, Steve, I know I babbled all afternoon, but it's this simple. Pressure sensitive adhesive, you need to apply pressure for the adhesive to work. That's why it's called pressure sensitive adhesive. If you don't roll the tape, if you don't run your finger across the tape when you're wrapping your Christmas presents, the tape doesn't hold. You need the pressure to enact the adhesive.
And it all goes back to, the best building material in the world installed incorrectly is not going to work for you, and you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
So, no matter what building material you choose, make sure it's installed correctly.
And
Pressure, is it mandatory to use the roller or is hand pressure?
Hand pressure is not enough.
yeah.
It needs a roller.
Roller or spatula, I mean, something, putty knife kind of thing, plastic putty knife, I'm sure can do. You can tell, if you take zip tape and you apply pressure, you can see the micro contours get embossed on the tape. And the minute you see that, you know it's a good job. If you can't see that and you just see a nice plate of the tape, it's not enough.
The green facer is engineered to be the perfect substrate for that tape. And then when you roll it, they actually call it wetting the adhesive into that substrate. And then do the test for yourself. Just put some on and scrape it down with a Bondo scraper or just your hand, and then put some on with a roller. And the key is wait for, I can't remember, is it 24 hours?
Yeah,
or
probably about
48
24 hours for it to.
Wait for 24 hours. That's how long the chemistry takes to actually bond, and then try and pull the two off. And the one that you just put on and wipe down, you'll pull that off. And the one that you wetted, you're gonna have to destroy it to pull it off. It's crazy the difference.
Don't you have to worry about wrinkles and things like that too? I mean, the roller wrinkles.
I think it tolerates a wrinkle or two, small ones, but the one I saw yesterday was wrinkle full, not wrinkle free. Go ahead, one question in the middle, he keeps popping up. They do have a quality control embossed Z ring on there. So yes, when you roll it, it gives you really quick ID on whether you rolled it or not, which is pretty interesting because I have been at a job and look at the tape and I know it hasn't been rolled and I ask, oh yeah, we rolled it, and I can see the roller. I'm like, well, that's got Z's, but that doesn't. Why? Oh, we missed that one.
There's a mic right there, sir. You got a question?
Not really a question, just to geek out a little further. I've heard that adhesives work because the electrons of the two adjacent materials actually kind of interlace. And if you want to really do something weird, go in the dark with a piece of tape and pull it off like that, and you can actually see some little sparks where those electrons are flying off.
Whoa, cool. He's even nerdier than us, Steve.
Well, I'm
I
gonna
love it.
yeah, but I'm not doing that. I'm just gonna mention it to Peter.
That's cool. Peter will be like, oh yeah, I knew about
Peter will be
that.
down in his basement, pitch dark, like you're trying to video it.
Trying to video it.
Better to have him look like a fool than me.
That's cool. I like that. I didn't know that. Hold on a sec. Grab the mic. We want to make sure we capture this on video too. Everything's being videoed.
I was talking to a rep yesterday about the zip system, about their tape. I thought they were going away from the little Z marker because after it sits in the sun, that little Z will go away. Like it'll go back to.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I haven't heard anything, but I don't
I heard that.
expect
That's
them to tell me
Yeah.
everything
No, I don't know.
all the time.
I just wondered
And
if
depending on the
it's-
reps you talk to, everyone's got a story.
So the beauty of the Z is you know that it's been done at least some period of time afterwards, and it's a good quality control check. It's one of the things I like about Zip, frankly, is that you can generally see all the details from the outside later, and the Z is one of those. It's pretty easy for you and I, frankly, to tell if it hasn't been rolled. You can tell it's, the guy at best wiped his hand down. But you really want to make sure that it is rolled. And so that Z can be a good quality check. But you don't have to use the Z, right? We can just use any old laminate roller like we all have from putting all those Formica countertops in all those years. And those are better because they have a handle on the top. Usually they're more durable. It doesn't matter. The point is we do want to roll it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, how do you know? Was it down? All right. We talked a lot about that in previous. Air management.
Oh, that was all water. We still got a ways to go, but
Yeah,
we're doing great on time.
Okay. Continuity, separation, and escalation. Escalation's a little bit of a stretch, but these first two are pretty simple. Continuity, red line test. Should be able to take a section, trace around the section, and it should marry up. Doesn't matter where you cut the section in the building, it should marry up.
Yep.
When people ask me what's the best material for an air barrier, my first answer is, well, where are you looking? Right? Because if you think about a window, I think it's something like where the window and the flashing and the window unit, you probably have something like 9 or 10 components that are acting as the air management system in that 3 inches. Right? So it can be pretty complicated there, or it can be in the field and it can be the tape on the zip. Separation. This one is, honestly, this is probably one of the most baffling concepts in our industry that I don't understand why we don't understand. Because you've seen me say, you're either inside or you're outside. You have one of two choices. I still go in a ton of houses where the air barrier is kind of halfway up the wall, or things are half done, or I'm looking at daylight out through the framing system, and they're telling me that the air barrier is complete. It really isn't. I mean, it's a pretty simple task to do. So, and then of course, escalation, right? If you have an air leak, the thing that loves to jump on that air train is moisture. Mm-hmm. And if that air leak goes to a nice cold surface, then you get condensation, and condensation does not breed pretty things.
It's one of the things I'm always surprised at when I talk to people in Texas about air leakage and why we want airtight homes, because we feel like, oh, it's not that hot or cold outside. But you know what it is outside a lot in the hot, humid South? Humid. And when that air leaks in around our bottom plates, through our crawl spaces up into the house, that water deposits itself on a cold condensing surface. And we often have a dew point in our houses because we air condition, and a lot of our homeowners keep our houses at 68 or 70. We often find that 70 is the perfect temperature to condense that hot, humid air coming into the house. And that's where we find a lot of mold growth when we remodel houses around here, is that air leakage. So if anything, we should be insane about air sealing here in the South, and people should be talking their builder into using air barrier or whatever it takes to get the tightest house possible so we don't have that moisture deposit on our walls.
Mm-hmm. Who believes houses should breathe?
This guy right here.
Yeah. Anybody else? I do too. I just believe that they should breathe the way I want them to breathe, not sporadically.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Great point.
Right? I want to think of our bodies. We have a dedicated input where air goes in. It goes to a filtration device, right? Why wouldn't we want our houses to do the same thing?
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite Steve Baczek analogies is Steve told me a long time ago, hey, Matt, if you're driving on the highway and you've got a window in your car that doesn't go all the way up, let's say it stops about an inch short, how comfortable are you going to be in that car? Will you be able to turn the air conditioning up or down, let's say low enough if it's a hot day to keep the car cool? If there's pollen outside and mold spores, how's your allergies driving around town with that car with the window that won't go all the way up? We're used to this in all other aspects of our life, but all of a sudden when it comes to houses, houses need to breathe. Well, maybe if you're in Santa Barbara, you're not as worried about air sealing because their windows are open 80% of the year. But most other places where you and I come from, it's not super nice outside 80% of the time. And so I want shelter for my family, and I want to be able to at least open my windows when I want them to, rather than have a window that I just can't close all the way down to that last inch that's open all the time. That's where the bugs are going to come in. That's where the pollen and mold spores are going to come in. That's where the heat and humidity is going to come in. So we want to air seal our houses as tightly as possible. And then once we've gained control over our environment, then we can bring fresh air in on our terms.
Yeah. So, 2009, Zip's been on the market probably something like 18 months. Very skeptical of using it. Fortunately, we had an absolutely horrible window manufacturer that couldn't deliver on time out of Canada, nobody in the US. And so I talked to the builder and I said, hey, let's just zip over all of the openings except for the door so we can run a blower door test. And I used to tease Zip for a long time. I'm good friends with the guys in charge on there, but I said, I did a full-scale model of your product that you guys haven't even done. 0.16 ACH 50, that house tested at what you're looking at there. And we've done a couple subsequent that have been like, 0.2 or so. Zip works.
Very, very tight.
Thing I want to point out, notice, there's no covering the nails in the field, and it still carried that number, right? So when people are worried about, well, Should we cover all of those for water? What do you need for a water leak? Water? Pressure difference. If I can't create a pressure difference across those nail heads by inducing a 50 Pascal air change rate, then how am I going to leak water? There's no pressure difference across that wall, right? Virtually none. I mean, and I would venture to guess half of that number is probably the seal around the blower door or the calibration of the blower door itself.
That's crazy tight, Steve. That's really, really tight.
Go ahead.
Question? Hold on a sec. We're going to get a mic over to you. One second, brother. This gentleman with the hat. Raise your hand for me, brother. I say this guy with the hat. There's like 100 of you that have hats on.
Yeah, there's a few of them out there.
I noticed there's no sort of liquid flash or tape at the bottom of your sheathing to where it meets the foundation.
Okay, so I'm pressed now. I got to answer this question.
What was the question? Say it one more time. I was daydreaming for a second there.
He's saying there's no liquid flash or anything.
Oh, there's
down
no
here.
liquid flash. Steve.
Okay.
Should we be concerned there?
So there's a couple camps in the building science world. All right, there's the camp that says we can tape that, we can put liquid flash, we can do all of those things on there. And then there's a camp somewhere over right about here.
Oh,
that's,
Steve's camp, for instance.
That says something to the order of, let's do my double bead of sealant at the sill sealer, let's kill it with that detail, and let's leave the bottom of that OSB panel open to dry. All right. Peter and I go back and forth on that one. I don't think it's a huge critical issue, but if you're going to force me to make a choice, I would prefer to leave that joint vapor open and give the zip panel the ability to dry.
And my response on this camp over here is, I like that detail. I think it gives extra forgiveness. I'm a belt and suspenders guy, and I feel like all the houses I've built and remodeled in Texas always have issues at the sill. And most of the water issues, frankly, most of the rot is the bottom foot of the house. So that bottom foot I really care about. That's where I'm going to spend the money and the time. Anything that's from my chest and up hardly ever has rot and mold on the house unless there's a window or something that was leaking. So where my ankles are is usually the place when I'm wearing an umbrella that gets wet. My belt, I don't get very wet, up here if I have an umbrella on. It's my feet and my ankles that get wet. So I'm always concerned about that. But it's good that we have differing opinions. And you could tape it, you could liquid flash it. There's probably 10 other things you could do, but I like that extra forgiveness at the bottom of the house.
Would it be counterintuitive to leave maybe, say, a 1-inch gap between your Proseco or whatever you're using as your bottom liquid flash?
No, because then you're wasting your time putting the Proseco up and putting it up halfway. Right? If you're going to do it, do it. If you're not, then don't.
Thank you.
Yes. I like this guy. He watches everything.
Watching it. That's a zip R
All
detail
right,
or a
quick
front
test
detail.
while we're all listening, right? March 23rd, 2003, I did a video on a foundation system. What was it about?
Ooh, wow. Find out who's got the photographic memory in the room,
I
aren't
gave
we?
you a chance to shine.
Oh.
All right. Anyways, I'm going to finish off that. We're going to go tit for tat here, right? I've actually measured with Peter, right, down at the bottom, but it's a slightly different detail. This is the detail where people like to do the concrete and bring the zip down to it and hold the framing in here, right? So it's slightly different. It wasn't Proseco. But in that detail, because this didn't have the ability to dry, we measured 20% moisture content down at this area. We went 3 feet up and measured 8.8% on a number of houses that had that detail in Raleigh, North Carolina. So, anyway. No, because it doesn't interfere. The rain screen's coming out on the outside of that. It's a funny side story. We did the typical detail where we did 2 2x6s with the bead of sealant and then the Z sill sealer. The builder absolutely hated me because every time it rained before they had the roof on, they had a 3-inch puddle of water.
Oh, yeah.
There,
That's right.
because it held water.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true.
Wait, we got to get you
Hold on a
recorded.
sec. Hang on.
She's jogging over.
This pretty girl with a hat on is going to come give you a mic.
So I'm assuming with that blower door test, you involve some mechanical ventilation. I've seen your video on dehumidifier and ERV. Has that changed at all, or do you have any other brands that you like for ERVs or HRVs? Can you speak to that a little bit?
So I'm going to summarize your question and say, if you have a tight house, you need some type of fresh air. And there's kind of good, better, best. I've made a bunch of videos about that. I wish I would have had a presentation on that on this show. Maybe we'll do that again. Or Steve and I, go back and look at Steve and I's catalog of videos. I've made a lot of videos on that. I'm a big believer these days that almost every house in America that's new construction, that's built the way you and I want to build it, probably needs an ERV.
How about this? Do you live in a house with carpeting, by chance?
I live in a yurt.
Wow, you got plenty of fresh air, man. You're good to go. No ERV necessary.
Wow.
My wife would not live in a yurt with me. But I think that's great if you want to do it.
What's the bottom of the yurt? What's that look like?
Cordwood.
What is it?
Cordwood. We cut trees out of the forest and chainsaws and
This is becoming more.
And are you building yurts for a living?
I build a regenerative living center, so we're doing a bunch of different types of housing.
becoming
and
more
alternative
I
stuff.
don't know what that
Work
means,
than I
but we're going to talk later.
Anyways, how about this? For a week, you wake up every morning, get down on your knees, put your lips at the joint where the bottom of the yurt meets, and inhale as hard as you can for about 7 days in a row, and then report back to us on if that type of air leakage is okay. Or would you rather have a filtration device and an ERV?
Okay.
You threw us off on the yurt building, I got to say. I wasn't expecting that. It's not,
I was like, I'm going to throw him.
none of the rest of the room is yurt building.
I think he's messing with us. I think he probably
Never
lives.
built a yurt.
He lives in a production home. He's like, I'm just gonna mess with these.
Yeah, he's like,
I live in a yurt.
production homes.
In a teepee, actually.
I'm
as
living
well.
in a yurt.
Oh,
You
yeah.
had a
actually
friend
live in a
that-
teepee?
In a yurt. Yeah.
No, Mike Lodge, who worked at Building Science Corporation with me, lived in a teepee.
Are you serious?
Filled two 2-liter bottles or two 1-liter bottles of water every day at the office and went home.
Wow.
I didn't know. Do you know that they make like industrial teepee? Like you can buy a teepee to live in as a house. It's a platform and it's like, they are really cool. I've been to it. It's really cool.
I don't know anything about that world, Steve.
Yeah, we made
I'm
the
with
poles
you.
and
If I said, hey, sweetie, let's sell the house, I'm gonna build a teepee.
I'm building a
Yeah.
yurt.
She said, you're building it on your own.
I mean, we
Yeah.
built it for
Damn
like
dogs
$4
with
grand.
ya.
That's right.
So I'll take it.
Talk to me, Matt. Continuity. This
All
is
right,
your baby.
so the opposite of a yurt is my house. I built a perfect wall house, and one of the things I really love about this style of construction, you guys have heard me talk about this before. I feel like I could talk about it all day, every day, but if Steve takes his red line and takes it from the foundation all the way to the ridge, there's nothing that's stopping us. There's no weird liquid flash details. There's no reliance on spray foam on the inside. All the air tightness, the Alamo, the last line of defense is the front of the zip system sheathing. Now, I said this in our other presentation. I want y'all to know and remember that we could have built this out of plywood. We could have built this out of OSB as our sheathing and then wrapped it with another peel and stick. There's lots of good manufacturers. I could have Prosecoed the building. That R-Guard system's awesome. I could have blue barriered the system. The point, though, is from the foundation, from my concrete foundation that has a brick ledge on the front there, all the way up to the ridge and then all the way back down again. It's 100% continuous on the outside of the building. And if there's one thing that we can get right in our house is, wow, Steve, I love the continuity. We want to have that continuous air barrier. And the exterior makes so much sense. I mean, honestly, this is something I learned from Steve over the years. When I was growing up in the business, we always talked about our drywall on the inside and that being our air tightness layer. How do we caulk between our drywall? And then I thought about, well, how do I caulk on the inside? How do I caulk my studs that might have air leakage with my standard house wrap? But when I started thinking about an air tightness layer on the outside of the building, it was like a whole new world for me. It just makes so much sense. And so that continuity that we've got on my house is the basis for forming a really well-built house. How'd I do, Steve?
Got a question in front.
Got a question right in front?
Thank you for this presentation and the discussion. from an architect's perspective, question on, with continuity in mind and prevention. When we put drawings together and what gets realized in the field, and perhaps zips, if you've seen the perspective axon installation drawings that they have, those diagrams. I've been in these lunch and learns with lawyers talking to architects saying, you need to be drawing more weather protection detailing. So the question is, from an architect's perspective, how detailed should architects be in conveying zips, nuance, waterproofing system versus their literature and ensuring the dudes?
Yeah, I don't trust literature, and honestly, sometimes I violate it personally because I believe what I believe, and if they say, hey, that voids the warranty, I say, I think it works better this way. But that's my personal opinion. I'm not saying, hey, we should go and hate on their literature. But if I took a project like this, you know, I would have a detail through there, I would have a detail through there, through there, through there, through there. I would probably have one through there, and that would take care of most of the house.
But would you do an elevation of how all the layers lap into the?
Sometimes I do. You know, I have my kids working with me now, so what I used to do and what I do now, I have to get them to understand things too. And so a lot of our details, what I used to do is maybe say a sill detail has now become 3 details. I do the pre-window install sill detail, shows all of the different flashing. Then I show how the window gets installed and properly shimmed, and then the 3rd detail is how the window gets trimmed out. So there's the steps there. So that way there, the framer doesn't give a crap about the trim. He cares about what kind of flashing and what do I need to do in step 1, right? And then the window installer, step 2, maybe it's the framer, he cares about that, but then step 3 is somebody else, right? So it's kind of depending on what you do and the best way to help your builders understand, certainly.
As a side note, if you're not familiar with him, he shoots videos on thebuildshow.com and has an overhead camera where he takes his drawings and takes a Sharpie that he calls Big Red, and he Sharpies up basically and shows you, now he's using the vibe board too, shows you his details from an overhead camera.
Always ready.
So he's got maybe 4 years, there's his Big Red, he's got 3 or 4 years of videos. He was on the original launch, or within a month or two, the original launch from 2020. So he's got a ton of videos out with a ton of details that, as an architect, you should be watching his videos.
Well, thank you.
Cool.
Real quick, I'm working on a masonry brick detail wall section. I know y'all are busy, but I'd love if I could talk nuance.
Yeah, find me later, but I just understand we're on the go.
It's a
I got to get on the go because he's going to be telling me we have 10 minutes left.
Fast question, because we got to keep moving.
Your top windows, did you have to move them up? Didn't you have in your story?
Yeah, I think you could see it on that. We go back one slide. His question was, I made the mistake of putting those windows too close to the roof line. So when I built up my roof with my foam and my battens and all that stuff, basically I had very little height between the bottom of the windowsill and the top of the... Every builder in the room has reframed a rough opening before, trust me, my friend. Yes, it's a pain in the butt. Yes, it costs money, but it happens, unfortunately. The harder part is not the reframing, it's the reordering the windows. I think my buddy has a shed with my old windows in it that I gave him. Yeah, because the windows didn't fit anymore.
Do you have a ratio for the bottom like you do the top?
No, but I have a minimum. I probably carry something like 4 to 5 inches there. By the time by the time you rough in the window, flash it, and then put the trim on, it's probably somewhere around 6 inches.
Yeah.
That opening.
Should we take one more question, or we got?
Oh, let's cruise. We got to cruise. Sorry, people.
Sorry about that. We'll come back.
Continuity.
I shouldn't promise that. We're not coming back.
Right. Continuity.
That was a lie.
We do a lot of projects where we have used the drywall as our air barrier, so we'll put it in before we do any of the interior partitions. This and that are the same house, right? This one, they came back, they taped, and then they put in the interior partitions.
Is that the original Build Show Build house?
Yes, this is the Hilltop.
You can go watch a ton of videos on that house. Jake built it. It's called the Hilltop Arrow House, and it's the original Build Show Build series house.
Yep. Continuity, notice there's the bead under and the bead over the sill seal before we place it down. I love that detail. It works. Enough said. Continuity, right? Window openings. Let's take that weather-resistant barrier and turn the corner, right? So that way there I maintain continuity. I need something to attach the window unit to maintain continuity. And I can't come out here and attach to this surface, so I need to bring this surface inside. And then I can attach the windows to it.
Now, you wouldn't necessarily have to bring the zip in. You could also do that detail with just tape,
Yeah,
right?
you could do a 10-inch flashing tape or something there. But
Then you also have to attach the window to that surface as well on the inside. And if you've watched our videos recently, I'm using like Prosco Air Dam or Big Stretch, or we could also use a European tape on that inside. But we need to get that air barrier on the front of the house connected to our windows.
the other reason we do this is zip R9 here. So you have 1.5 inches of polyiso there.
Oh, that's cool.
So if we just taped it, you wouldn't have anything to nail in that 1.5 inches.
There you go.
This actually gives you the sheet good to nail to. All right, continuity. The guy that one wire, one hole, this is one of his houses. This is how he likes to do it. We do 3/4 inch 1x3s for strapping. So what he'll do is he'll rip a bunch of Advantech and basically trace out the floor plan. And then he'll bring in and he'll seal his drywall from there to there. And it's like, you know, people always say, well, what do you think is better? For him, that works really better. All his guys are trained, his framers, everybody's fully in tune. Boom. They get in there and he says, you know, hey, Johnny and Timmy, go bang out the Advantech on the ceiling. Those guys know what he's talking about. They go bang it out, right? Somebody doing it the first time, yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more, take a little bit more time. This was the very first time I ever did this. This is a double wall assembly. You can see there's a space in there of about 5 inches. But notice we brought that flange out here, and that's to catch the drywall. So we'd run a couple beads of sealant here. And if you've never used Tremco acoustical sealant, it's actually horrible. I don't know what I get more joy out of, watching a guy like, you know, have this caulking string from his hands or lifting the 1,000-pound window. They're both pretty entertaining.
Don't get it on your clothes because you
On
will
the
throw
job.
those pants away, FYI.
The beauty of Tremco is you could put these beads of sealant up on Monday and drywall on Friday, and it's still elastic.
Yeah.
They don't harden.
That it doesn't ever cure.
Right. And then we came in and we put the whole drywall in. And this is the house that we tested the 0.16. Notice all the zip. It's over all of the openings. Right? That's how we completed the air barrier on that house.
Awesome. And no recessed cans in that.
And no recess. They were all wall sconces and stuff in the bedrooms. Yeah. This was I was scared shitless, to be honest with you. This was the very first passive house, and I told the story yesterday when I met the client, and he said I wanted to do a passive house. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and Googled passive house. Right? Came out and told him, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's a set of energy parameters, and there's an air tightness spec. And, you know, we just have to look into it a little.
Did we just hear that Steve has done some fake it till you make
No,
it?
I don't fake it. I just, you know, fear is a great motivator for me.
I've faked it till I've made it a lot in life.
But anyways, we did a good job. Yeah, you know, continuity. When I see this stuff, I laugh. And, you know, I don't laugh because I see this stuff and it's done poorly. I laugh because somebody that's sitting here and doing every one of these joints and then has these voids clearly has no concept about air barrier continuity.
What they're trying to do.
Right? Someone that seals half the holes and leaves these open has absolutely no concept about air barrier continuity. And I know what happens here. I have a meeting with the owner, general contractor. He tells his site super tells his assistant tells the insulator of the owner of the insulation company, who tells their manager, who tells poor Johnny, the guy that actually does it. So remember that little game we played in kindergarten?
Telephone game.
Yeah, you started out with like, I want a bicycle for Christmas, and you got, my mom's making a pumpkin pie at the end, right? Yeah, so that's how we get here.
That looks like pumpkin pie. That's pretty bad.
Right? Separation. You're either inside or outside. We have closed cell and we have the stego here. Now, the thing I like to point out here, there's a lot of people, I see videos, they're all meticulous about this coming up and taping it. I'm in the camp that, yeah, I'm not as meticulous. Get this stuff down. We have closed cell here where we sprayed it. Even if we substituted that for rigid foam, I'm not so crazy about that has to be meticulous. Anybody that wants to challenge me, come on over any one of my projects. I'll actually video it. Kneel down, try and blow through the ground. I'll watch. Right? I've had guys tell me I can't use concrete. I had a passive house guy. You can't use concrete. They don't allow it to be used as an air barrier. I said, okay, go ahead, blow on it. I'll watch. He's like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, I am too. I've actually tried it. You can't blow through concrete. Separation. You know, Matt talked about this down on the Risinger build. Build the green box and then put everything outside it. Put the ledger outside it, hang that porch roof, put that porch ceiling in outside of the green box, right? Understand where the red line is, build the red line, and then add everything to it.
Yep.
It's pretty simple. Separation. Can I have a wood stove in my house, Steve? Certainly. This is Reyes, right? It's a sealed unit. Has a dedicated input.
Oh, that's what that is.
That air comes in, it combusts, and it goes out through the pipe. And there's a sealed flange here. That never communicates with the room unless I open the door. And consequently, 1,500 square foot house, 2 armloads of wood a day heats the house.
Wow.
And might I add, 6,800 heating degree days.
Oh, dang. Cold climate.
Cold climate. And again, just more of the same, right? You're either inside or you're outside. And again, like everything, details, this is a little bit of a pain in the neck, honestly, but if you go down to Ocnoplast, they're looking at ways to get rid of those brackets, right? But we have to pay attention to the details. Yes, separation, this is not. This is the house that I went to Houston and I talked about yesterday. Yeah, 160 degree attic, 68 degree duct running through the outside. Probably not the best decision ever made in building. But it's insulated. This is, I wrote an article for JLC on attic hatches. So we had 22 inches of rigid cellulose insulation in the attic. So we have the finish drywall cap, but once you pop that open and drop it, you get this plywood channel, and notice this is all mechanically fastened against the gasket. So that's how we air seal from the inside. Here's the not so good one wire, one hole deal, right? You can see there. There's all kinds of places. You cannot seal. If you put more than 2 wires in a hole, you can't seal that hole. Right? 1 wire, 1 hole. Escalation. Yeah. You know, the thing about this, you know, when you look at it, we can learn so much. My kids absolutely hate when I take on a renovation project. They're like, Dad, we don't like those. You know we like new construction. I was like, yeah, but we get the chance to go down and have a nice 4-hour discussion about what we're seeing. That doesn't go over well either. But sooner or later, they'll come around. But look at this.
That's one of my Texas photos, actually.
That is one of your photos, right? Notice the bay that has the most mold in it. It's the one that has the hole in it, right? Notice the areas where the wall is cold and the wall is warm, right? You get a really good understanding of what's happening, right?
We do not want vapor barriers on the inside of our walls in a hot, humid climate.
Yeah. Believe it or not, when I did that 2009 house, this is how we had to deal with some of the recessed cans and or smoke detectors, right? We had to build boxes for them. Jake and his guys, we did the Hilltop Arrow project. They took a bunch of the R6 remnants and they just built little shallow boxes, had the electrician run the wire in. Just different set of solutions. This is a project I did with Jake. You know, it's not only about one wire. These are all the lines for HVAC. This is a project where we had a commuter rail train on the back of the house, and the homeowner said, is there any way that we might be able to isolate some of that rail vibration? So this is a product that's, I think the company was Soundaway, and it's a neoprene foam. You can get this in multiple thicknesses. I think this was like 5/8 of an inch, and you can see it installed there. We use that as our sill sealer to try and help isolate some of that ground vibration when the train went.
Did it seem to work?
The homeowner says it's better than the house they lived in, but I don't know if this was the success or the fact that we have better insulated walls, triple glazed windows, and all of that, and what they're exactly saying is the success story there, right? And of course, you know, this is Kent Hicks, my buddy that builds just super really good houses, duct blaster, no blower doors when he tests his house, regardless of the size. Vapor management, uniformity, perspective, and rate. Uniformity, it's a uniform load. It's never a point load, ever, ever, ever. Rate, drying versus wetting. As long as we dry more than we wet, we're in good shape. Perspective, this is my favorite, because everybody thinks there's this big old bad vapor monster that's coming to get us. Where's your vapor barrier? What are you using for a vapor barrier? I don't know, we do some projects that don't have a vapor barrier, right? We got a vapor profile across the wall if you want to talk about drying potential and wetting potential, but I don't have a vapor barrier in that wall, right? Because I'm more concerned about using it as an asset than I am a liability. Go ahead, Matt.
By the way, Steve, we technically only have 2 more minutes on today's presentation time to finish. But down here in Texas, I'm a big fan of this product. This is by Polygaurd. It's UV240. It's an aluminum facer, which I like because a lot of my projects take a while. And this one has a 2-year UV exposure rating, which is really nice. But it also is a peel and stick, so I know I've got the correct thickness of material on the outside of the building, and it's really easy to detail. So it's a nice uniform WRB, and it's okay to have a vapor barrier on the outside of the building as long as you're in climate zone 3A or below. And so this is a product I use a lot, especially on my high exposure houses.
And it's okay as long as you don't have a vapor barrier anywhere else.
That's right. This needs to be the only place that you have any kind of a barrier or a slowing down of drying potential.
We'll blow through vapor, and episode 10 on Build Science 201 on the Build Show website, you can watch all of the thermal stuff.
Yep.
I won't say we designed it that way, but it does require you to go watch it.
That's right. Finish it.
Uniformity, uniform load, right? Put the sheet on, make sure that we're maintaining continuity so that load, all that moisture that's trying to migrate up through the ground is handled, right? Siga Myrex, again, all that moisture that's trying to get into my wall system, Myrex. And it's a smart vapor retarder, which means it is permeable in a sense that it does allow some moisture to get in there, but if it accumulates a lot of moisture, it has the ability to dry back out. Uniformity, venting a roof. This is a SIPS roof. We're looking up at the over ventilation. There's furring strip there, and then this is that 3/4 inch airspace that's venting the roof all the way up above the SIPS panel.
That's cool.
All right. Zender, go talk to them. They got a beautiful booth down there. Zabi, Charlie, they're some of the smartest guys in tune with this stuff. You want to talk good RVs?
See you to my house this afternoon, too.
Exactly. Siga Myrex at the ceiling. That's our ceiling air barrier there. And we use the 2x4 so we can put lights and stuff inside. You can see.
Is that your multi-gen house, Steve?
No, but we did the multi-gen the same, but same builder, different project.
Okay.
This is one of the coolest systems I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but it's EJOT. And I'm sure it's not the cheapest rain screen system, but man, they got it worked out. It's a European rain screen system that's just extremely flexible. But EOT, go check it out. All right, this is a project that we inherited. They had a bunch of mold there. Notice where they don't have blocking, there's not as much mold as where they do have blocking, which suggests that mold is due to ventilation or lack of ventilation there. We just came up on top of the roof and over-vented. We still use the same box soffit that was vented, and we just came up and cut a strip down through there and vented it over the top.
That's really smart.
How did we dry wood? Remember, put it on sticks. How do we dry wood on our walls? Put it on sticks. It's not rocket science, it's building science. All right? Every detail. Turn it into an asset. That's a corner board, cedar corner board on a house. More Zender. All right? Yeah, houses should breathe, but I want them to breathe that way. And again, I talked about this one yesterday, 285 linear feet of 3-inch pipe, and we buried it all in this little manufactured basement in the ceiling of that hallway.
That's cool.
In this house here, we actually put our vents for our ERV in the closet, and we did louvered doors. So that way there we could temper the ventilation air by mixing it with the closet air, but we pressurized the closet, so we're moving air in the entire house. Oh, here's the picture I talked earlier about with Peter. Yeah, 18%, 9%, 3 feet up the wall. Ability to dry. Rate, we already talked about that image. Rate, the ability to ventilate. Doesn't matter. We can use roofs. We can do some really nice designs there. We can do some outriggers and have our ventilation in there. We can make ventilated roofs look pretty, right? We could put pine boards on houses for siding, as long as they have the ability to drain and dry. This is the UV batten strip on top of that UV paper by Benjamin Obdike with the boral boards. This one? Over here, like the penetrations of the nails? No. I don't worry about them.
This is just showing the, look at the vapor barrier behind the wall there in the wrong spot in a hot, humid Texas climate. Put things in the, not having an education in building science means that we can make mistakes that will be costly for our buildings.
We're about done, aren't we? Because I'm going to leave you with this one. This is a project, go watch it and we talk about it, but you know I love a little bit of a challenge, and I've always heard you can't ventilate a roof that's shallower than 3 and 12, and so I designed this house, and it has a 1 in 12, and I said, you know what, I think we can vent this one. Stars are aligning on this. It was only 18 feet wide. I can bring in air from the sides. We're going to use a black roof, which will help with that stack effect. We have a 10-foot overhang on this side, so we can pump a ton of ventilation air into that system. And we know it worked because Peter came down with his smoker and his blower door and such, and we actually tested it. It took about 28 seconds to get smoke to be billowing out the detail.
That's really cool. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us for Build Science 201. Very kind of you to be here. Go watch these videos on thebuildshow.com. You can also follow Steve's work. He's a prolific Instagrammer at Stephen Baczek Architect. I think we've got some home store buses that are loading pretty soon. And believe it or not, this is the last day of the conference. So if anybody's heading out from here, thank you so much for your support. Hopefully you guys will consider coming next year. I think it's October 16, 17, 18 in Dallas, Texas next year for Build Show Live 2025. That's got a ring to it, doesn't it? I got to bounce because I got to get to home
Post
store
that
stuff.
stuff
I
and
really
tag me,
appreciate
man.
you guys.
I'll
I'm not going to have
repost it
time to
for
stay and talk, unfortunately. But thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it. We'll see y'all later.
It's been a great week here at Build Show Live in Austin 2024. I want to thank one of our project underwriters, Polygaurd, who is providing this content from our classes, which were amazing in client management, building durability, and building science, where Polygaurd has been a leader in air and water management for a long time. We've used a lot of their below-grade water management solutions, but they brought out some great new stuff from their termite prevention to their air control products. Polygaurd's been solving things for builders for a really long time, and we're grateful that they're still working to make our lives easier every day. Thank you to Polygaurd, and thank you for your continued support of our educational content.